It's my pleasure to bring to the stage Scott Hennekens. He is our keynote speaker this morning. Scott is chairman of Vita Flash Acquisitions, Acutus Medical, and Vista Holdings. I asked him for a bio, and he gave me a short description of what's important to him, and I loved it. He is, the things that are important to me, he's a father of 3, married 31 great years, and he's a hopeful grandfather of 10 or more. But it goes without saying, Scott's a successful entrepreneur, a CEO, board member. He's an investor in Medtech with multiple IPOs and unicorns, and we're really looking forward to his talk today. Please welcome Scott.
All right, thank you very much, Scott, and feel very lucky to be here. And can you go back? I think I double-clicked there. So the goals for me this morning, hopefully they fit with yours as well, is hopefully some insights from my past. I feel so lucky to get to work in this industry. I've been in it for 30 plus years. I had great mentors like Mike Masalam, who I worked for at Edwards, and Ron Matricaria, who built St. Jude, and Bob Croce and the guys at J&J back in the day. And they all played it forward, and they were all available. So hopefully there's a little bit of playing it forward from some of my stories, some of the things that have been accomplished, and some insights to help motivate you as you go forward with your dreams relative to entrepreneurship and in this medtech area. And, I think we're at the most exciting time ever in life sciences and in medtech, and we really have an opportunity to leverage all of this technology that you've heard about last year, this year, relative to convergence and advancements, to help democratize healthcare around the world. There's 7.5 billion people on Earth, and really, like surgery, only 2.5 billion people have access to it. How do we get after that as we move forward? And that's going to mean there's going to be a number of unicorns, and I'm going to prove they exist, and hopefully help you guys create your own as we move forward here. All right, so 3 little topic areas, that we'll run through. Start with my dream and your dreams, and then we'll go into some of the stories relative to the companies I've been involved with, and then how I see things today which may relate to what you guys are doing to create this future. First of all, my dream, from a very early age, was to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to build things. I wanted to be a part of teams. And again, privileged to work in this industry, but privileged to stand in this room with a bunch of other entrepreneurs who have that vision. And, it's not an easy job. It's a very, very hard job. And we'll talk about that. It's hard to be in startups, to disrupt big, large players. You guys are tackling that. I want to encourage you. I want you to leave more enthusiastic to do it than you came in the door. So we'll make this a little interactive. I'm going to ask you to do 2 things to start off. Why are you doing what you're doing? You can either think about it real quick or write it down. Why are you doing what you're doing? Basically, what's your dream? Okay? And then what does success look like in 5 years for you, your company, what you're doing? All right? Take the time to do that. Why are you doing what you're doing? And then we're going to revisit this at the end, see if things change at all. All right, so number 1, my dream. What was my dream? I told you, to be an entrepreneur. I think one of the most important things about being an entrepreneur is to face reality as it is. Face reality as it is. Ron Matricaria used to always say, things are what they are, not what you want them to be. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my upbringing. And I think it was my first entrepreneurial venture, which was growing up in a rather challenging, difficult environment that required me to think about how I finance it to make the reality what I wanted it to be. So I was born in 1964. I do have a high optimist quotient. I was adopted and ended up with a single mom. My dad left when I was 5 years old. Both of them high school educations. No one had gone to college. My mom moved the day after she graduated from high school in Iowa to Southern California. My dad was a truck driver. He drove away in the truck, left her with 3 kids and 2 foster kids, and she had never worked in her mid-20s. That was the environment that I was in. So here's me, first day of school, you know, in probably 1972. Other kids had brand new pants. I had brand new patches. You got to love the old, you know, Sears Tough Skins. But I had this dream. I don't know if the dream as much was to get out of Riverside, which is where I grew up. You know, you always be weary of places where they say, hey, you're an hour from the beach, you're an hour from skiing, you're an hour from Palm Springs. Yeah, but you're still in Riverside. And it's like where the smog goes to die in Southern California, you know, back in the day. But, you know, I had a dream to get out of there, to do something, to make a difference. You guys all have that dream. You're all doing things that involve making a difference. And continue that. So I used to go grocery shopping every week with my mom, not to help her grocery shopping. I would go into the aisle and read like Forbes magazine, Fortune. Couldn't afford a subscription, but I could sit there and read for an hour. And in reading it, this school kept coming up. All these guys who had gone to Harvard Business School, or gals, and companies they'd started and built them. And when I was 12, I ripped this one picture of the Harvard Business School out of Forbes and put it up in my bathroom. I said, I want to go there. I want to start companies. And with that step became, you know, responsibility. You took that step to start a company. With that comes responsibility. And so with those dreams comes responsibility. Look, I mean, I grew up in an environment, it was Mother's Day on Sunday. My mom and I were going through, there were 23 kids on the 3 streets that we grew up on. 17 of them, time in prison, 2 that have gone to college. So when you look at this period of time, you know, have you ever heard of the hero's journey? It's every Disney movie, right? You know, there's a call to adventure, there's refusal, you overcome, enemies come, despair, then, you know, gut check, climatic finish, hero at the end of the Disney movie. This is a lot what life is like, and this is a lot what entrepreneurs like. You know, if you've worked at any company I've been involved in, you've heard the phrase, there are no bumps in the road, right, Jeff Mack? You're sitting there. There are no bumps in the road. That is the road. And this is the road to success. And you got to get through this. This is my brother. He's still in prison. Kidnapping, drugs, you know, burglary, you name it. This is my sister. If you Google my name, I'm like the 3rd one that comes up. The criminals come up first. You know, sister, 20, on a drug farm, shot, you know, there, a red underline, goes to prison, out of prison now, and doing pretty well. So it's a road less traveled, but you know, these are obstacles. These are obstacles you face, that you're gonna face in building your company. So at 16, I would leave school every day at 12, and I went to work at the Bank of America. I only got to play one sport. I wanted to play 3 sports. Nope, you're gonna play one sport because you gotta save money to pay for college. This is sacrifice. This is an entrepreneurship. I want to go home. I want to go do this. No, you got to sacrifice. It's a hard job in order to achieve these different things. The other interesting thing about working at the Bank of America is if you work there full time, they'll pay for half of your education. They didn't even know that. I kind of found it in the employee manual. And the other thing was, you know, they would also give you 10% of any savings of ideas that you could come up with. So I was constantly trying to find ideas, you know, in order to get financing. One was, you know, I go to the UPS or the post office and they said, why aren't you sorting your mail? If you sort your mail into the zip codes, you can save 10%. Put that idea in, save this region like $200,000 for Bank of America. I got $20,000. So look for your financing in all these different crazy places. Government funds, you guys are doing it, but there has to be some hustle there. I worked full-time at Bank of America my first 2 years of college. I went to school in the morning, on my lunch, and after work, had great people at Bank of America that let me do this, and ended up getting a full ride for my last 2 years to USC. I'm not telling you this to pat myself on the back. This is what entrepreneurship is. This is like, you know, figuring things out, having to change, having to adapt. That's what's required for you. So the top might be your plan, and what things look like. I don't know anyone, any VC who's in here probably will say, you know, those are those graphs that go like this, right? And they never come to reality. They look more like below. And you know, last year we were all in that boat during COVID. Now we're coming out of the other side of that as we move forward. So I eventually did get into Harvard Business School after they rejected me, of course, but I was used to rejection. My first driver's license, I was 5'5", weighed all of 105 pounds, bright red hair. For those who knew me 20 years ago, I had bright red hair, so I was used to a lot of rejection being like that. But I also didn't take no for an answer and kept at it. Went and sat in their lobby to talk to the admissions officer, tell them they made a mistake, and then they gave me deferred admission so I could come the next year. Remember the lobby. So after Harvard Business School, now what? What do you do? So jumped into Medtech. I wanted to work on teams. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted psychic returns. 6 years I didn't go right into entrepreneurship. This is also part of this. You got to prepare for your success. So for me, that was, let's go see what great looks like. So, worked at Baxter, at Edwards. Mike Masalam was my first boss, hired me. I learned a lot during that week before he got promoted, and then I got a new boss, which was this guy, King Nelson, who a lot of you know, who's a fascinating, great guy. But I felt like after those 6 years, I was ready to go do a startup. But you guys, a lot of you have families, you've got other commitments. So I was ready to this last point, but are they ready? Is your family ready? And I talked to a lot of young entrepreneurs. Like, I shared my quarterly plans, the annual plans, with my wife. Thankfully, she's a tax attorney and the like, but I would force her to read them. Like, you have to know what I'm going through. We got to do this together as a team as you move forward. So, go, as a number of you know, that's what I say. I jump into this entrepreneurial intoxication period of time. And the company was called Digirad in San Diego. We were going to change the future of nuclear medicine. We're going to go from vacuum tube technology to solid state technology. This is early kind of digital play, a lot of like the digital plays that are happening today, where technology creates entire new opportunities. We were going to create a whole new category, solid state versus vacuum tube nuclear cardiology. This would allow us to make it smaller. We could put it in a truck. We could move it around. We could have a different service model. We'd have higher image quality. All sounded great. We closed a $20 million financing, have a big article on us in Business Week. How much value is there in an article in Business Week? Makes you feel good. You can send it to your mom. She's proud of you. All that. There's no value, right? There's a lot more value in making sure the technology works, and our technology did not work. We had big problems with it, and again, this is kind of that next lesson. You heard last night on the panel, there was an asking about humility, and I thought that was a great answer relative to humility. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO, you've got to be willing to change. Change is the only constant. The goal here is success for the company, to create a solution for your customer. It's not to do the product you had the vision of. If the market says that's not right, if the technology says that's not right, if things evolve, you have to change. And so the reason you have to change is because when our technology didn't work, I tried to give the $20 million back to the VCs. VCs don't take money back. It's a one-way street. They will not take your money back at all. So we changed our platform, successfully developed it. We then signed an agreement with Johnson & Johnson because we basically can go from these vacuum tubes to solid state, portable cameras, but we could put that on a small transducer and we could do sentinel node detection for breast cancer with J&J. So, hey, I become the CEO. I was the COO, I became the CEO. My first son, Jared, was born. I have 2 daughters than him. These are the 3 that I'm counting on for the 10 plus grandchildren. First week on the job, J&J terminates our agreement. We had hit every milestone. They had a strategy change. They terminated. My first week as CEO, I had to lay off 40% of the employees. I went home. I said, I am never working with J&J again. I got every J&J product out of the house. I threw it in the trash. No more Barbie Band-Aids. No more Little Mermaid shampoo. This is when I found out that as a family, we were not in this together. The kids were pissed. Caitlin and Lauren were not supportive of losing their J&J products. So anyway, we expanded. We changed and added the service business. Things were going really well. $40 million run rate. We filed to go public, and then September 11th happens. So here we are. I had achieved that dream, building a company, helping patients, $20 million of stock in current dollars, and then September 11th happened. So a lot of other people were way worse off, no problem, no doubt about that. But we have to pull our offering. I helped Digirad get through a Series G. That's where we were at that point in time. But basically, everyone lost everything they'd worked hard for because the market was frozen for 6 months. And I decided at this point in time, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And this is another thing. Like, you can work really hard. If the industry dynamics aren't there, if it's not going to meet your needs, sometimes you've got to just say, hey, it's time for someone else to take this over. Digirad went public 2 years later. I made $158 from my options. I said it was a nice dinner out, but I mean, how nice can a dinner be out for $158 when you got to pay a babysitter and the like? So you can imagine the wine was not so good. But that dinner still sticks in my mind, relative to all the lessons learned. Culture matters, team matters. The same team that did Digirad, most of that team went on to the next company, Volcano. You got to be flexible. You got to change. The investors made 3 to 4 times their money if they participated in that Series G. The company got public. I mean, for a company that had a technology problem that failed, raised more money to get through that, go to a service business, got public, they did okay. But this last point is important. Bad industry dynamics beat great management, cultures, and execution. So make sure you're in a market where, again, the juice is worth the squeeze, as John Onopchenko would always say to us as we looked at opportunities at Volcano. So moved on to Volcano after this. Much bigger market. Interventional cardiology is a huge market, lots of things developing, coronaries, peripheral, neuro, well-financed. We were very focused on vulnerable plaque, trying to understand the plaques that are likely to progress, cause heart attacks. At that point in time, ultrasound was this catheter that you'd stick in that had a black and white image that was very difficult to interpret. We were going to be the ones who colorized those images, tell you exactly what the plaque is. You could stent it before it ruptured, prevent all of these heart attacks. All right, so I joined in at the beginning of 2002. A lot of you have been to PCR in Paris in May. So I'll get there, and it was a double whammy. I brought Caitlin, I brought the 9-year-old at that time, my brother-in-law and his daughter, and we're gonna have a couple days of enjoyment. And we get off the plane, and this is what the weather's like. So if you're an adult, what do you see? You see, oh, it's just my luck. I say, my first trip to Paris, it's gonna rain the whole time, it's gonna be cloudy, right? But that's not what an entrepreneur sees. An entrepreneur say, oh, there are no bumps in the road. That is the road. You gotta be the kid. These kids had the most fun that day, jumping in puddles, running around. They didn't even notice. So, as you're building these companies, you gotta be the leadership for your companies. You gotta be the kids jumping in the puddles. We'll get through this. We'll get beyond it as we go forward. Next day, perfectly clear. My daughter still remembers this day because her cousin got to ride the elevator to the top, and I made my daughter walk all the way to the top. And I said, things that are worth doing are often hard. And so she still repeats the story about how she had to walk up, she saw all these views that her cousin didn't see, and she earned seeing the view from the top. And that's often what startups and building companies and achieving objectives are about. So it wasn't just a dark, rainy day. We also got our early clinical results from thermography, which was measuring the temperature. It didn't work at all. There'd been some falsification of data by this one investigator on another company's product. But this virtual histology, this colorization stuff looks pretty good. Big deal. You got software. You don't even have an IVUS catheter or anything to put it with. This is, build a software and sell it. This is not a unicorn at this point. There's no way the software could be a unicorn. There were 2 IVUS companies, Boston and Jomed. So what do? We say, hey, let's go to Jim Tobin and let's see if he'll sell us his IVUS business. Of course he's not going to sell their IVUS business, but we also knew that all of their IP had to be out-licensed when they bought SciMed, and it sat over at Philips. So keep that in mind. And then, fortuitously, January 8, 2003, the smartest guys in the room, do you remember Enron? Enron collapsed. Who collapsed with Enron? Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen audited Jomed. gentleman now needs to find a new auditor. The new auditor found problems. I read about it on January 8th on this newfangled thing called the internet, and I call Olaf Bergheim. I said, Olaf, this is our opportunity, you know. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we're getting on a plane tomorrow and flying to Sweden. And we're going to wait in the lobby, like I waited in that Harvard Business School lobby, until the CEO meets with us, and we're going to buy their business because they have their bonds being called and da-da-da-da-da. So we sat there in the lobby for all day. He met us for breakfast the next morning. He told us who his chairman was, didn't tell us where his chairman lived. We found out from an investment banker that he lived in London. So after we met with him, we flew to London, knew where his address was, went to his house, saw that it was Mark Twain's old house. That was kind of cool. Then we went to the Starbucks on the corner, and it was out in Chelsea. And so then we call him, and he's like, well, I'm busy. I'm leaving to go to this dinner, you know, and plus I'm way over here in Chelsea. Oh, that's odd. We're in Chelsea. We're at this Starbucks. Oh, that's only like 200 yards from my house. Oh, what a coincidence. So he has us over, and he only has an hour, but he's a Swedish shipbuilder. Olaf speaks Swedish. They talk Swedish shipbuilding for an hour, and finally he agrees to let us do due diligence over the next 2 weeks. And we end up reaching a deal with management to starve off their bankruptcy. And we would buy the IVUS business. Killed by the creditors. We then go and have to partner with Abbott because we couldn't buy the whole business. So we got Abbott to buy the interventional part. We would buy the IVUS pods. So we reached that deal, and it's fantastic, right? Now we have an IVUS catheter. We got the software. We're off and running. Not so fast. So we're at the airport, Vince Burgess and I, to fly up. We're being introduced as the new owners at the company, and we get a call for Rutger Schimmelpenninck, that trustee. And he says, Scott, sorry to let you know this, but Medtronic has come in with a higher bid, and we're going to take their bid. And you know, your 6 months of really being a great partner is over. We're selling the thing to Medtronic. I'm deflated. We go outside and we just sit down at the very first place that we can sit down, which happened to be in the smoking section. And a guy walks up and he picks up like 4 half-smoked cigarettes, puts them in his mouth, and starts smoking them. And Vince Burgess turns to me and he goes, well, see, our day's not that bad. That really stuck with me. We just said, you know what? It's September 11th, 9/11 again. You know, shit happens, and it's going to happen to you. It's how do you react to those bumps in the road to overcome them. So, we were killed by the creditors. The deal went to Medtronic, but we still had the opportunity to go get the Philips technology. Philips didn't know they had it. We showed them that they had it. They were nice enough once we did that to also put it out to bid to Terumo. But we ended up winning that bid. We also then did the Medtronic Hail Mary. They were investors in Volcano. We went to Bill Hawkins and said, look, we'll give you licenses to all this technology. We'll do all this stuff for you. And at the 11th hour, Father's Day, actually, of 2003, they pulled their offer, and we were able to win that asset. But again, making your own luck. The lessons here is it's less the story. The story is an example of what you're going to have to do to build companies. You have to make your own luck. So we acquired this. Be careful what you wish for, though. It's a $40 million revenue business, losing $10 million a year, unaudited financials, and the like. So we proceeded over 3 years to progress forward with the technology, colorize it, expand globally. And this is another where something kind of transitioned, and it applies to today. One of my favorite marketing books is the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And one of the lessons is if you can't be first in a category, create a new category. And so we created a whole new category. We weren't an IVUS company. We said we're going to be a precision-guided therapy company. And this was a market that was $200 million, and we said this can be a $2 billion market. And it involves FM with pressure and flow and image guidance and image co-registration and all these things. And we started marketing to Philips and the non-invasive companies and the invasive companies that this was its own category. And all three of them created the solution. We called it precision-guided therapy. Well, this not only created a category we could build in and win in and be defensible, but it also set up the tone of like, hey, Philips, your market's not growing over there. You can move over here, or Siemens, or hey, Boston's in IVUS, Abbott, Medtronic, you can move over here and build out your portfolio, your broader solution. So as you're building these unicorns, important to not only be in big TAMs, but also have 4 or 5 people that want to buy you. You know, at the end of the day, setting yourself up and thinking about who it is that's likely to acquire. Not that you have to sell, but that's just going to create friction and more potential value. So, you know, I told you about my September 11th experience trying to go public. Almost died trying to take Volcano public. Very first day of the roadshow, flying into LAX, got on the backwash of a 767, upside down, straight at the earth. And I sat there and said, well, I didn't think, oh my God, you know, I'm not going to see my 10 grandchildren. I went, oh my God, God really doesn't want me to take a company public. You know, this is ridiculous. But we're able to get out and perform very well. Building out that category, so think about your company. What category are you in? What's your category? And then it was, hey, we want to change things, and we're paying attention to what's going on in tech, other business models. Pay attention to what's going on. We saw what Microsoft was doing. It was no longer, hey, Lotus 1-2-3 had a better spreadsheet than Excel. It didn't matter if Excel wasn't quite as good as Lotus 1-2-3. The product was not spreadsheets anymore. It was Microsoft Office. So Boston always had a little bit better rotational IVUS than we did. But the product was no longer rotational IVUS. The product was this one system, many solutions, an open platform, Covidian products, Medtronic products working on it, 23 apps, Boston closed platform, you know, 2 apps, their ICE catheter and their IVUS catheter. We end up winning 80% of the installed base. Well, then you're going to win 80% of the disposables as you move forward. Are you a platform or are you an app? You're a company. In today's world, you kind of have to think in those terms. You may be a platform for this portion. You may be an app relative to how you interface with the rest of the ecosystem. I think it was Alan May last night was talking about, you know, some of these things and how they're expanding, where you fit in this new digital world. Also, what is your optionality relative to expanding into other adjacencies and keeping those adjacencies open, which we did as we expanded across the body. So by December 14, we were up over $400 million in revenue, and we sold to Philips for over $1 billion. I didn't really want to sell at this time. I thought we were undervalued based upon where the market was and everything else. But we did it, and it's worked out very well. Philips is a great home for the technology. Today, that business is doing approximately $1 billion a year, still growing a little over 10%. So it would have a market cap of somewhere north of $6 billion. And most importantly is the top line. We drew our org charts upside down at Digirad, Volcano, where I'm at the bottom, patients and physicians on top, and that was always our focus. And now there's over 10 million patients that have had Volcano products. So that was unicorn number 1. And it demonstrates all of these lessons, right, of the entrepreneur's journey and how you're gonna see this. And that constantly repeats. And you just have to keep going. You get to that hero set, you go public. Now you go to this next stage where you go to the polycephalic phase, as we call them, multi-product, multi-geographies. And there's always new challenges. And you have to keep going as you move forward. So again, the main thing I take away here is just the TAM and be in a market with very good industry dynamics where you can be a leader in a category, a defensible position, which was also mentioned on that panel last night. Then, when you have the great team and the great culture, you can win as you go forward. So, now I've done that. Now what? Do I just become a board member, investor? And this ties into basically today and how I see things, and hopefully there's some benefits to that in this third phase. And so Renee and some of the people at J&J called and said, hey, we're looking to do this project with Google and J&J, develop a next generation robot. Went up and met with the Google folks, which was Google Life Sciences. They were still part of Google X. And this guy, Astra Teller, who's a brilliant individual, and Andy Conrad. And Astra had this kind of chart that said, you know, Scott, over the next 10 plus years, we're going to see 10 times plus improvement in all of these technologies. I won't name them. There's 30 actually on their list, but just the main ones as it relates to us in Medtech listed here. They're going to be faster, cheaper, smaller, become ubiquitous. You can build them into products. You can create new platforms. And at Google, they would say, hey, that leads to this opportunity to create these moonshots. You've got these technology breakthroughs that are now scalable and affordable. So now these big problems, 7.5 billion people, 2.5 billion people have access to surgery, that's a big problem. Or, driverless cars or internet access for 7.5 billion people. Now we can have radical solutions. So are you thinking big enough about the technologies, the problem, and what you can solve? And then you look at what's happening in Silicon Valley and what's happened over the last 10 years. There are over 50 companies just in that valley, and you feel an energy when you get off the plane, right, in San Jose, that have over $10 billion valuations. We're talking about decacorns, not unicorns. And so many of them are built around this last premise. The most valuable companies have staked their futures on digital platforms with interrelated, interdependent products and services. I don't care if it's Amazon's not there, but Google, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, you get the idea. Spotify, Pandora, all these spaces completely disrupted by platforms with apps. So again, how do you fit in an ecosystem? Are you a platform? Are you an app? How can you develop so you have more control of the platform, to have more of the data? These are the kinds of things that are creating tremendous value. They are also at that time not being applied really into medtech and life sciences. So you saw these things where the IT department used to be in the corner. Now, all of this information and capabilities at your fingertips, all your data can be in the cloud. Books were in libraries. Now all the information in the world's available at your fingertips. Cars were done, unconnected things. Now they're connected, smart objects. How do we apply that in medtech? So it's something we kind of coined as Medtech 3.0 or Life Sciences 3.0, where in the past, at the beginning of my career, you'd make an oxygenator, you'd make a catheter. That was it. That's only the beginning today. It's the product plus the connectivity, the data, and the activation of that data in a particular platform or as some kind of app. You got to think broader about how you do that. That may mean you have to partner with someone to connect. That may partner with someone relative to the data, but how do you create bigger solutions so you're not Lotus 1, 2, 3, right? You're Microsoft Office. You're a Google suite. You're an Amazon suite of products, and your solution gets bigger and more protected. So joined up to do Verb Surgical with Google and J&J. Again, we knew we weren't going to beat Intuitive in what I call Surgery 3.0, which is robotic surgery. We had to create a whole new category. So that was Surgery 4.0, digital surgery, working with Verily, and just seeing what they were committed to. Verily, Google Life Sciences got renamed to Verily. The mission is, make the world's health information useful to everyone. Google's was to make all information. They were more specific. And they had this mantra around collect, organize, activate. And I think you should be thinking about that relative to your business. For me, it was, I like connect, collect, activate. But either way, collect, organize, activate. How are you doing that in your business? How are your competitors doing that? How do you stay relevant relative to that? And then why? Well, why are you doing this? Well, be competitive. But, for us, it was 5 billion people who don't have access to surgery. It was all these surgeries that were needed. It was all these deaths that were preventable. And then on the 2.5 billion people who have access to surgery, the quality is so variable. How do we improve the quality of those? All these things now become possible given where technology kind of is. And we did that in a platform kind of way. So how's a platform, again, apply to you? It's not just for minimally invasive surgery. We can start using robots and data in open surgery or hybrid procedures. Now we can think about the solutions in an entirely different way. But again, just like on the Silicon Valley interrelated synergies of a Netflix or an Amazon or a Google, how do we get synergistic platform effects by having robotics, enhanced visualization and image guidance, instruments, connectivity, data analytics, and machine learning. How do we do that in an open platform like Apple, where there's no Airbnb and Uber and all these things without an open platform on Android or on an Apple? So we said, hey, we've got to connect to the cloud. We've got to connect to the PACS and make all that economic information available. We got to have service portals to update our software. We got to collect data to improve surgery, then have system updates. And we have to have a surgeon portal. The surgeon needs quality metrics. The surgeon needs information. We knew we weren't going to, 57 different procedures, we're not going to come up with all the apps to improve each of those procedures. But if we had an open platform, then you have companies like CSATs, you have other OSI, which we ended up buying a couple of these, but partner with people to be on your platform to make it all go to the next level. And then you hear a lot about autonomous driving, autonomous surgery. I believe all those things are possible, but I think they're 10 plus years out. We were focusing, and a lot of the companies I work with today, we're focused on the first two levels, which is actionable information and semi-autonomous information. What do I mean by that? Easy to apply it to driving. So in a driving, actionable information is GPS. GPS doesn't drive the car, but I can enter the information. I know where the traffic is. I can go around it. I can do things the best way because I have that information. I have a rear view camera. I have sensors. This gets you 70, 80% of the way there to improving quality without the hurdles of regulatory, without the hurdles of which are much higher for autonomous. Then semi-autonomous is parallel parking. So this might be suturing. This might be some simple, straightforward steps that are definable to do that can take out a lot of variability out of a procedure. I like to think about it like manufacturing. Do a Pareto. Where's 80% of your variability? It's usually 20% of the processes. How do I automate those? How do I standardize? How do I improve those? So how do those things apply to your technology and your company to improve your quality? So Verb ended up being bought by J&J, and it's progressing forward in combination with Auris and their whole soft tissue robots, flexible robots within the J&J mantra. So what's next? What are kind of some of my final thoughts for you? As I started thinking, this is the most exciting time ever in life sciences and medtech. Back to Asher Teller's 10 times slide. All of the stuff that's going on in other industries is creating the opportunity to use their technologies at scale, cheaper, better, faster, smaller. How are you going to apply those to create this medtech life sciences 3.0 world? Are you a platform? Are you an app? Are you both? How do you fit in with those? And I'll talk about horizontal and vertical views there. How do I then open up new opportunities to improve things for the 2.5 billion, but go after the 5 billion that weren't accessible before? We as an industry, we're making things that are super expensive that only apply to the US, Western Europe, Japan, then trickled out into other places. There are going to be lower cost suppliers that are going to start going after those 5 billion in different ways. Those are huge, huge opportunities. And I think, more unicorns mean more patients that will be affected positively. So I think of things across the continuum of care, this horizontal on one metric, which is to say, we're going to start monitoring people for different conditions. We're going to get earlier indications. That'll lead to further diagnostics, earlier interventions of therapies. Then you're going to have hospital therapies. Then you're going to monitor people after that. And then you're going to have things come back around. It's kind of that mantra of plan, do, check, adjust. And so if you think about, an Apple Watch, monitoring for arrhythmias, then you get some early indications. You have additional diagnostics. You got iRhythm, Holter monitors. Now you go into, an EP lab. You get treated for AFib with more connected devices. Then you have monitoring, and you come back around. You look at diabetes with sensors and full systems and plugged into your phone, where the doctor's getting information, you're getting information about your kid. All these things become possible. That's across the horizontal. Then vertical connectivity. You go into an OR, you go into a lot of episodes of care. None of these devices talk to each other. So it limits the learning that can come between them. So I'm involved with company Proximie. There's others like InTouch, Avail, Care Syntax that are trying to connect things vertically. And then people like Bright Insight with clouds for the med device industry. How do you connect those so you have an operating system so these things can communicate better? You can learn better together. So the companies that I'm working with often have this kind of platform effect. Acutus is an EP where we went public in the middle of the pandemic last summer, building out a portfolio of products that are trying to connect things vertically. And it's an open platform to work with St. Jude, now Abbott's catheters, or work with Medtronic's cryo products to provide better mapping, better tools as you go forward. So, my 4 public companies, NuVasive, we're looking at digital spine surgery. It's spine 3.0. What do we have all of these elements, robots, visualization, advanced instruments, connectivity. When I joined, the stock price was about 40. Today, it's 70. Part of that is we've announced our robotics program, our navigation program with Pulse. Envista, we went public right at the end of 2019, at like 17, we're 45 today. Digital dentistry they're $3 billion in revenue, is a big part of that message. Navigation, different imaging, connected platforms. Now if you're NuVasive, there's all these kind of like ankle biter people with implants, but again, we're trying to make them Lotus 1, 2, 3, right? Because they're not going to be able to provide the full solution. So how do they then work with us? We become the platform, just the way Apple charges a toll for access on their phone. This then leads me into, hey, there's so many of these opportunities. It's such an incredible time. Let's do a SPAC to try and be more involved in creating more of these unicorns. So I'm also involved in, on the boards of 4 private companies, plus doing the SPAC. And the objective here is, unicorns 3, 4, and 5, and help a lot of patients as we move forward. So hopefully you see through these a lot of themes as you go forward relative to this entrepreneur's journey that you guys are all on. You're motivated to get through and lead through these challenges as you go forward. So to wrap things up, back to where we started. Looking at, why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? I challenge you to, as you walk out, is that big enough? Is your dream big enough? Is it right? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to adapt? How do I commit to looking at competitive dynamics, technology dynamics, platforms, et cetera, in order to drive that success over the next 5 years? So thank you guys, really appreciate it, and wish you all, the best of success. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but.
Who's up? Somebody's got to have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. I can repeat it.
Thank you. Hey, Scott. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. So, one of the themes that kind of stood out is this concept of not only testing, but a lot of learning along the way. And I'm sure along the way you had, quite a lot of mentors, people who helped you out. When you think back on the people who advised you and guided you, what was the most memorable, painful thing that a mentor or someone told you, and how did that, change you in terms of a leader and entrepreneur?
Yeah, look, I started my first job was at Berkshire Medical Systems. It was the very beginning of minimally invasive surgery and lap choles. I had to leave after 2 years there because I was just a pain in the ass. It was like, and I had a really good boss there, a great boss there, a guy named Bill Maya, and he's just like, you're too hard on people. No one's gonna ever meet your standard. Nothing's ever good enough. Like, you've got to, and that helped me flip that to that graph of patients and physicians on top. I work for you. How do we work as a team? High, expectations, but not be, such a challenging boss that nobody wanted to work for. Everybody wanted to work for John Rooney, the product manager. All the RAQA and clinical people were getting all his projects done on time. He was leaving them lollipops, taking them out for drinks, doing all these. I'm like, why do I have to do any of that stuff? Like, just do your job. Work till 10 o'clock, get it done if you have to. I'm flying across the country because I want to meet my budget and sleeping on the floor in the airport at 5 a.m. When I land, this is what you do, and no, that's not, you may do that like at Volcano, Jeff was, our number 2 under our CFO, and he can attest, like always only flew Southwest, never, flew first class, always rented the cheapest, car with, like this one has electric windows. I want the one with the roll down. Like but it was like, part of it was that some of the lessons learned from these great leaders I saw that had that servant management style, which was, I'm running through walls and breaking things and pissing everybody off. So that wasn't scalable. And thankfully I learned that pretty early. But I still have to fight that because I'm impatient. I want to go. And you got to make sure to bring people along. Your family, your teams, your investors, your board, et cetera.
We got time for a couple more. Anybody? We don't need the mic. Somebody's got to have a mic.
Yes, Lisa.
So what new technologies that you are on your radar that you're super excited about, or new startups that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm excited any time where you can make something smaller, faster, better, that opens up more people being able to use it. So now with the SPAC, I was telling Lisa the other day, it's like, I've probably been in 65 presentations to us, in the last, month and a half. It's like 2 TED Talks a day. It's fascinating. So I think that's one category. The brain is a huge category. I think it reminds me of where the heart was 25 years ago, where when Ken Charhat's back there, when we started at Edwards, there was like one market that was $1 billion, and that was bypass surgery. And you knew there were going to be all of these other markets that evolved, and you see that in the brain. So all this neurostim stuff, all hyperfine, with portable MRI and making it accessible to all these people, like relative to stroke and all the different neuro companies, and learning about the functionalities of the brain. Brain monitor. We don't have vital signs, for the brain. There will be vital signs for the brain, in the next 10 years. We were, talking last night about, different areas, whether it's monitoring, whether it's, just monitoring the patient and their action and tests and the combination of things. So those are areas that I find very, very interesting as well. But I do think this how do we make things with data and the like. No one would have guessed, we'd have all of these cell phones and 6-7 billion of them, with everybody having one in the palm of their hand around the world, 15 years ago. So how do we dare to dream to say, hey, is it 5 billion people who have access to a certain level of care? And we're now have some of the technologies to accomplish that. Yes?
So why do you do what you're doing right now? In other words, what's your motivation at this point?
Yeah, my biggest motivation is just making a difference, relative to that vision of the 7.5 billion people and 2.5 and improving care. So that's what gets me excited every day, and to help. And I love helping other people achieve, their dreams. I mean, I've had 22 people who've worked for me now that are CEOs, and so investing in those people who, when they come to work for me, I say, hey, if you want to leave in 2 years, I want to help you achieve your dreams. So then creating that leverage, because that ties into the goal. So if I'm helping these 5 people, it's that 7, then it creates that leverage. That's something I learned back to Omar Switzerman relative to Tim Walliger. Tim Walliger worked at Hypertech in San Diego. There was no medical device industry in San Diego. Everything kind of blossomed off of Hypertech. And then Tim, did all these things like Biosite and Digirad, and then Digirad becomes Volcano, and now there's 6 or 7 other startups in San Diego off of Volcano. So I love being a part of that and creating that effect for people and for patients. Yeah.
How does the next 20 years of business models look like versus the last 20 years? So as you mentioned, there's AI, big data, high performance computing, cloud technology. With all this convergence, we're going to find and unlock more potential, more understanding of preventative medicine, early diagnostics. So I just want to hear how does the business model look like? It's going to be quite different from the last 20 years.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Medtech, like I said, Medtech 1.0 was make that catheter or make that oxygenator. 2.0 was now we have computing power and microelectronics, and and we can do things differently now. We've got that, plus we have connectivity and all of these other things. So I would say I don't know. And I mean that in a positive sense relative to, I didn't know where Volcano was going to go. I didn't know where Digital was going to go, but I want to listen, where Verb was going to go, or any of these companies. Listen to the market, listen to things, try and find analogs in other industries on how you develop a model that creates value that's defensible. So that you're not just doing something because it sounds good, but it's not, there's no exit. There's not 4 or 5 people that want to buy it. There's not, it can, like Clubhouse today. Everyone's all excited about Clubhouse. I was thinking, like, how does this work? Because Facebook could add that in a month. LinkedIn could add that in a month. So how do you, not get disintermediated, when you're, selling 90% of your products through Amazon, and then they just start selling direct in an unbranded product? I don't know. Like, these are things you gotta think about what, is likely to transpire as you move forward. I know that doesn't answer your question, but that's the world we're looking in. So then, just like I looked at what Microsoft Office did to Lotus 1-2-3 and said, let's do that to Boston Scientific, which we did effectively. I would say look to these other models about how you can do similar business models that can work, applying those technologies in your particular space. Alan.
How do you see costs coming out of the system? We're pumping all this technology in, and the big companies love selling expensive ticket items, so they want to keep doing that. And we can't afford the system, and we have to push costs out. How do you see that happening? What are things we can do to help that?
Yeah, I think that's this room, right? I mean, stasis is the preference for large companies where there are R&D departments to innovate and disrupt them, to force them to have. When does biology change? When it has to. Like you learned that again this last 15 months. Like we adapted and we changed, and so I think. Like if you take Hyperfine, portable MRI. Now portable MRI can be 1/10 the cost of MRI in the suite. That makes it more accessible. It also frees up, these kind of procedures can be done on that. Now you have more capacity over here for the high cost part, but overall your costs go down. You look back at, and I think diagnostics and guidance, so like us back at Volcano, FFR would tell you that half of the stents that were getting put in were unnecessary. So our market share at Kaiser, 50%. Our market share at HCA, 5%. So, but that changes, over time as people say, hey, we need to treat the right patients the right way. And that's where data and all this connectivity is going to help. In the world of, Verb, what our vision was, the visions of like Avail, Proximie, these other guys is, let's start understanding, surgery better. It's very much an art today. How do we make it more like, a manufacturing floor where you should use these steps, these tools, you'll have less blood loss, you have faster recoveries. Those are some examples that I can give you. But also, look, the camera technology is advancing on these iPhones, and now you can have a disposable endoscope instead of having, one that has to get refurbished and sterilized and everything else. So now, I see a future where there's probably $100 disposable endoscopes that have high quality imaging. So taking those technologies and bringing them over and leveraging them, I think is critical. Now, that's the cost going down. Will the price go down? That takes other people pushing. All righty. Thank you guys very much. Good luck.